All right, let's kick it off. My name is Harald Schubert. I'm the lead architect of the BPM unit at SAP, and I'm excited to be here today and share with you our latest BPM cloud offering that became generally available end of last month. I want to start with what Gartner refers to as bimodal IT, right, which is about the practice of companies to operate in two modes. Mode 1, which targets areas that are well understood with the purpose to further optimize processes, and Mode 2, which is more exploratory in nature, where you experiment to solve new problems, like how you can better engage with your customers, scenarios involving the Internet of Things, machine learning questions, etc. SAP has always been strong in building standard software for Mode 1, whether it's classic S/4HANA or any of the applications SAP is offering natively in the cloud, like SuccessFactors for HR, Concur for travel management. For Mode 2, SAP now offers SAP Cloud Platform to develop, run, and operate extensions in the cloud. It's in this context that we've built SAP Cloud Platform Workflow, which is what I want to present to you today. Besides the bare runtime, Workflow comes with tools to model and administer your workflows and an inbox for your users to access their tasks. When building workflows, you can develop your own custom UIs, which are then seamlessly mashed up with the inbox into a coherent UI. Rules will follow later this year. Workflow uses SAP Cloud Platform integration to connect to other services and systems, SAP or non-SAP, on-prem or in the cloud, in all those cases where you need protocols other than REST, or if you need to do any heavy lifting like data transformation, receiver determination, and so forth. Finally, SAP API Business Hub is a central developer portal in the web where SAP publishes its services APIs. From there, you can basically explore the services and test drive the services you're interested in. Now let's look under the cover and let me show you how we built the service. I figured this might be interesting for you. So as this image tells you, we're using open source through and through, right? So workflow engines are no longer by themselves a differentiating factor. And we figured that open source workflow engines have come a long way and are simply good enough for what we need. So we're using, in this case, Activity, running on a Tomcat cluster with Java 8. And so far, we've been really happy with the decision. So when you buy our service, Workflow is made available to you by means of a subscription, which grants you access to the service via a dedicated secure endpoint. Internally, we create a database schema for your tenant to ensure data isolation. This is what we call the platform as a service model. We're also working on an OEM-like SaaS scenario where ISVs or partners can use Workflow within the SaaS application they are building and offering to their customers. This way, the SaaS customers don't directly use Workflow, but they rather interact with Workflow via the SaaS application. To this end, we support the notion of a tenant within a tenant, where within the database schema we created for the ISV or partner, tenant columns across all the tables in the schema are used to ensure data isolation between the SaaS customers. All right, with that, let's head over to the Cloud Cockpit and let me walk you through the experience of building a workflow from scratch. All right, so this is like the central entry point into SAP Cloud Platform, whether you're a developer, an administrator, or a support user. From here, you can access all the applications you have developed and deployed in the cloud. You can see the services that are available to you. You can check persistence, details, connectivity. And we'll start with looking at the services. So these are the platform services that are offered by SAP Cloud Platform. They are more technical in nature, obviously, right? So we have categories here for analytics. We have categories for collaboration, like the Gamification service we'll be using later, data and storage, DevOps-related stuff, integration, the integration service, the workflow service, which we'll be using. Finally, down here at the bottom, the portal service. So let's go ahead and look into the workflow service. I've already enabled the service for my account, right? So if you start with a fresh account, this will not be the case. Instead, you get an enable button, you hit enable, and then within a matter of seconds, we onboard you. That's the point in time when we create the tenant for you, and then you can already start. So that's the central point where you can access, for example, documentation, right? Developer guides, REST APIs. So here we have some RAML documentation for all our service interfaces that we offer. And we'll start now with building a simple workflow. And the scenario I want to show is based around an HR scenario. So let's assume you have hired a new employee. You do that in SuccessFactors, for example, right? And at the end of the SuccessFactors process, the employee has been hired, and you want to extend this with a buddying process. So when the new employee joins the team, you want to have a teammate who is maybe supporting him a bit, figuring out what the right equipment is for him, and you want to do this with an extension based on Cloud Platform workflow. And that's what we'll do now. I hope you can read this at the bottom. At the bottom here is the property sheet. So we'll just go ahead and give our workflow a name. And this is a little tool here that helps me type so I don't mistype anything. So we give this a name and a subject. The subject is the text that shows up differently for each and every workflow instance. It supports curly brace expressions, so you can access the data in the workflow context. And now let's create a simple one-step workflow to begin with, where we want to assign some equipment by a buddy. And this also gets a subject. Again, parameterizable. We enter some recipients here for the demo. I'm hard coding this, but in a productive scenario, obviously, you would be doing some expressions or something like that. And finally, I need to key in some coordinates on how exactly I want the UI to look like. So this is all based on an HTML5 toolkit that SAP has in its portfolio, SAP UI5, which we'll be using. And with that, we should be good to go. So we deploy this thing. And now we should have a workflow deployed. And what we now need is the portal. Already enabled that. So as you might have seen on the diagrams, that's the point in which we basically aggregate all the UIs. And this is like an administrator UI for content authors who basically administer portal content. So you can create what's called a site. I already did that for today's demo, and this is the experience you get. So it's a tile-based UI, which you can fully customize as a user. You can add own tiles from a catalog, add other groups, and so forth. I'm not going to do that. And here is our workflow definitions. And as we can see, there is exactly our employee onboarding scenario. Like Eduardo, I also did this a couple of times. And now we'll start a new instance. And this is a way how I can key in some payload to send along when starting the instance. I can pass in simple JSON. And obviously, that's aimed at the developer. In a productive scenario, you would not be using that, but you would have a start UI, which calls the REST APIs, and you would not see this. So for the demo, I'm using this tool, and I am passing some, it can be arbitrarily nested JSON, right? So I'm using an employee structure. I have some user details, so I want to onboard John Thompson, have some job-related information, and let's kick it off. Instance was started. And if we now look, we see onboarding of Joe Thompson, 11:35. That's exactly what we expect. And we should have a task in our inbox for Joe Thompson. There it is. And here on the right, you can see my custom UI that I have developed, right? So you can do arbitrary UI development that you want, and you cannot really discern it from the inbox. So it's really mashed up into one UI. And here in the screen, you can basically select the equipment for the employee. So let's say Joe is not an Apple fanboy, but wants some solid Windows equipment. So let's give him and some Samsung brick. OK, we kick it off, confirm the task. One task is gone from the list, and if I now look at the instances, the instance has been completed. All right, so this is good. I have a first version, and now I want to extend my model, right? So far, we just have a user task. So typically now, you would probably be purchasing the equipment maybe with Ariba or something. And what you might want to do is type in api.sap.com, which takes you to the API Business Hub. Quickly logging in. And here you can explore APIs that SAP has in its cloud services, and gives you basically everything at your fingertips. I don't know, you could be checking S4HANA Finance, for example, Fixed Assets API, I don't know. So you can browse the documentation, right? This gives you all the details about the parameters, and now that's quite neat. You can also test drive this. So in the sandbox environment, basically. And then you see, what exactly these services look like, how they work, and we might be using that. But for today's demo, I'm actually doing something different. I'll be using a platform service. And I'll be using specifically the gamification service. So the idea is, right, we want to incentivize our employees, to actually do this whole buddying thing. It's extra work for you. So let's say we give you some experience points and badges and stuff like that. And what I'm using is the gamification service. And what I'm now showing you is this gamification workbench. That's the central place where you can design a game, just as an example how you use our services here. And game design means you think about what the experience points are. So I have a type of experience points which are called buddy points, and there is badges that you can get with an image, and there is a rule in the background which, for example here, buddy laddering, whenever an onboarding was completed, as a consequence of that, I want to give buddy points to the person who completed the onboarding, and this is what I want to invoke. So let's make some space here. And let's now say we want to add the buddy points. And now we need to key in, similarly as for the user task, some details. So we're calling a REST service /gamification send event. It's going to be a post method call. We tell what data we want to send along when we do the call, and where we want to store the results. And finally, we need to key in the host and the port, right? So where exactly is the service located? And SAP Cloud Platform has the notion of destinations, which is essentially an alias, which allows you to decouple the model from the actual service endpoint, URL, ports, and everything, so that if you transport the model from a dev to a production landscape, you don't need to change the model. That's what's called a destination. And you can look at your destinations here in the connectivity section. And I already prepared this. So here you see host and port and credentials. So I'm using basic authentication with username and password. And now finally, so this URL is not directly pointing at the gamification service yet, because the gamification service expects certain protocol, JSON RPC encoding. We only talk REST in workflow today. So what I'll be using is Cloud Platform integration to basically do a little bit of transformation. And I'm just showing you this, prepared this already. So this is what is called an integration flow, which basically tells the ESB how to actually dispatch the message, and it's again following the BPMN notation. So we use the same notation for both workflow and integration, and that's very simple stuff. It's converting from an application JSON body to a URL encoded body, and that's what we're invoking. So that's basically it. And now the last thing I need is to figure out what the payload is that I want to pass on to the buddying call. And I'll be doing this with a script task. So we basically allow you to write inline JavaScript code, which you can then use to basically manipulate the workflow instance's context. So you can read and write, do other computations if you like, and really plain JavaScript, nothing extra. And here I'm preparing the data structure I'm passing to the gamification service. These scripts, these JavaScript files, they're executed in a sandboxed environment, right? So when you imagine that's a multi-tenant environment that we're working in, we want to avoid that you can break out of your tenant and access other companies or other customers' data. So we're doing this in a proper way, and also doing time constraints to limit, the amount of time you can, do computations within these JavaScript files. All that is taken care of. Okay, so let me check how I'm doing in time. Good. All right, so let's go back. We should have a new model, version 43. Okay. Let's try that again. So I'll just confirm this right away. And now to show that actually we have received buddy points, here I wrote a small UI, again integrated into the portal, and here I can see at 11:42 onboarding of Joe Thompson was completed, right? So it's a nice experience you get all integrated into one portal experience. And yeah, that's basically all I have. That's what I want to share. Hope this was useful. And with that, I open to questions.